Well, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Of course, we can't be here in person all together because of coronavirus for the second year in a row, sadly, but we have done this last year, so we do have some experience in supporting students in a remote way during coronavirus times and getting the subject selection right. But before we kick off with all the information we're going to share with you, it's with pleasure that I present our college captain, Martin Nguyen, who's going to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land.
I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and pay my respect to their elders past, present, and future. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord Jesus, I give you my hands to do your work. I give you my feet to go your way. I give you my eyes to see as you do. I give you my tongue to speak your words. I give you my mind that you may think in me. I give you my spirit that you may pray in me. Above all, I give you my heart, that you may love in me, your Father and all mankind. I give you my whole self, that you may grow in me, so that it is you, Lord Jesus, who live and work and pray in me. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Well, welcome to Catholic Regional College Sydenham. We're a faith community, and certainly Catholic, as we pointed out in that earlier video. It means that religious education is compulsory. We're proudly Catholic, a faith community, a learning community, and also a growing community. Our numbers are going up, and certainly the priority is for our 7 to 10 colleges where you are coming from to be enrolled at our school, priority over anyone else, because this has always been your school. And we're very proud that we're able to offer specialist opportunities for all students, unlike any other, across any other school. In fact, we're recognised by governments at state and federal level as having exceptional offerings that no one else can match. And we'll continue to do that. In fact, next year, we'll spend $11 million in buildings on this site to increase the opportunities that we have for students. There'll be Sacred Heart House with specialist mathematics rooms and religious education rooms. And our hall will see 2 courts inside. We're going to expand that, as well as a function centre. So Runnels Stadium will be built next year, going from just a single court inside to a full stadium. So you as students and families coming into this community will certainly benefit from that. We've got a lot to tell you tonight. We've got a lot of information to share with you. We will be sharing this slide presentation with you. You will receive a copy of this. It is going to be on our website, so please don't be madly trying to scramble things down. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions and to find out more about what's going to be a journey that we take with you over the next few months until students join us full-time on site. We certainly work in partnership with you, and that's what tonight is about, starting and establishing that partnership, which is really important for the success of every student. So I think I'll hand over now and introduce Jenna, who's going to speak a little bit more about that partnership and how it will unfold for all of us. Jenna's our Assistant Principal, Resilience and Wellbeing. So over to you, Jenna.
Thanks very much, Brendan. And thank you to everybody who has been able to join us tonight as COVID again has foiled our original plans. As Brendan said, tonight is an opportunity for that partnership to start to form. I do invite you, if there are any questions that arise as you are listening to the presentation this evening, please feel welcome to use the Q&A function of the webinar, and we will do our best to answer those questions as we move through this evening. We are a college which is growing in numbers every year, as Brendan mentioned, and we are one that is underpinned by a cluster system, each one of those holding its own special values. We recognise that the transition from year 10 into senior schooling, be it VCE, VCAL or otherwise, can be a very daunting time for a lot of young people. And at the college, we make sure that there is a system which ensures that each one of those students are cared for, each one of those students are monitored and their learning needs are met. As you can see on the screen there are a number of ways that we ensure student support within the college. Each of the students belong to a cluster, as it says there, with their home groups in those. Space meetings occur on a regular basis, which is an opportunity for the wellbeing team, along with a cluster coordinator, to come together and essentially address the social, emotional and learning needs of each of the students in the college. Personalised learning plans are made in conjunction with parents, with student and with specialists that are in the college also. On the screen, the infographic in front of you there gives a little bit of information in relation to the SPICES structure that exists in the college. SPICES is the structure in which we try to ensure that there is growth of the whole student. It is a holistic approach to wellbeing. It is a holistic approach to learning, which we think is important in terms of ensuring that not only learning needs are met whilst at the college, but also the development of the person as a whole. SPICES are very closely linked to our pastoral care sessions. Pastoral care occurs every day in our college, with extended pastoral care sessions taking place at key points within the year or within the week also. Each of our clusters have a value system which the students very much become a part of their cluster and very much become a part of the community through the involvement that is available in the college. Each of our students have the opportunity to become involved in leadership positions, whether they are official cluster leadership positions or college leadership positions. And there's also many informal opportunities that arise for students throughout the time that they are at VRC Sydenham also. We have a lot of support that is in place for students throughout their 2-year journey of their senior schooling and education. We have free access to support through student services at any time students are welcome to access. This includes access to learning support officers that are there to assist through academic programs. We have 2 careers counsellors that are available for students to access at any point they would want to throughout their career pathway journey. And we also have psychologists on site that students are able to self-refer to at any time. And also our psychologists work closely with our wellbeing team and cluster coordinators to ensure that all of the students' learning needs and social and emotional wellbeing needs are met and catered for. Through Sector, which is our learning management system, we use this as our primary form of communication. Parents are able to log on to Sector through the Sector Engage platform, where they are able to freely access information in relation to their students at any time. This can be about attendance concerns. It can be an opportunity for you to be able to monitor that alongside your students. It's also where classroom teachers, coordinators will also communicate with you in terms of any wellbeing concerns that they may have. You will be able to see any commendations that have been entered for your students. It's of course where you can access reports and other information. And it's also a platform that you can access policies in relation to us being a child-safe school, and also where you can log on to interact with classroom teachers if you would like to be in contact with them. Whilst we, of course, have student parent teacher interviews at key times throughout the year, Sector allows you to see how your young people are engaging in their classes in real time. You're able to see the content of their lessons, and you're obviously able to communicate freely with teachers and other staff in the college. On the screen in front of you is just a snapshot of what the parent platform for sector looks like. It's probably a little bit hard to see on your screens there, but essentially the indication is that you can see the notices that are happening in the college. There are tools there for you to be able to message real time with teachers. And as I said, it's also where you can access attendance data, reports, and it's also the platform where communication from the school will be sent to reach you. We are a college that values the contribution of our parents and community, and this is something that we're going to continue to focus on as we move through the coming academic year. We really value parental engagement, and we are going to be looking for ways that we can increase the voice of parents in our community and also the voice of students in our community as we move into the 2022 academic year. We see that there is great strength in working in collaboration through your students, yourselves, and also alongside the support that is available within the college. There are lots of ways that you as parents can help us to support our mantra that we really do live and breathe in the college, which is every student, every pathway. As we move into this session within the year where you're starting to think about subjects, you're starting to think about potentially what might come after year 12, it's really important that you discuss your child's interests with them. Young people are always going to do better studying subjects and learning about topics that they are keenly interested in. We encourage you to meet with your child alongside key staff, such as careers counsellors, about pathway choices that might be available to them. We encourage you to attend tertiary information sessions and open days, and also to consider, as you move into this subject selection round, to consider that there are multiple pathways available for your child. So again, having that conversation about interests and what your young person might like to achieve after school. Discuss whether VCE, VCAL, or even an unscored pathway is the best option for them and what they hope to achieve through their schooling and beyond. Research indicates that families are essential to the success and well-being of young people during the later years of schooling. Sometimes there is a tendency as young people get older, there is a greater sense of independence that sometimes comes with studies and with learning. However, we know that the research tells us that the more support and the more engagement the whole family has in the young person's learning, the better the results and achievements are going to be. We see that there is an increased attendance at school. We see that there is a more positive attitude towards learning and being engaged in classroom conversations and discussions. And we see that the academic outcomes and support networks for students are much stronger when there is a real family approach to the learning that is happening in classrooms and that which is happening in homes also. I would like to now introduce Jamie Mason, who is the Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning.
Thanks, Jenna, and welcome to all the families. It's great that you're participating in this webinar, because I guess it's important, as Jenna was just saying, that your whole family is working towards a common goal, which for us is for your young person to leave us with a achievable and sustainable post-school destination. So the next 2 years are really about your young person achieving that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the various pathways that are available at the school. And I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the process that you'll need to go through in the next couple of weeks to ensure that subjects are selected appropriately. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is, the three main strands of learning that occurs in the senior secondary environment. For those of you who are new to the senior secondary environment, there's obviously some terms here that you may have heard, but it's important to understand the differences between them. So the VCE is the main certificate in Victoria. It's currently designed for a number of reasons. The main one, I guess, is to recognise completion of senior secondary education, but also completion of the VCE can lead to an ATAR, an Australian Tertiary Admittance Rank, which is particularly useful for students who are thinking of entering university straight from school. I would say, though, that there are many pathways to that ultimate goal of university, if that's the goal. VCAL is the other certificate that is awarded currently in Victoria. I'll talk a little bit more about the changes that are going to be occurring over the next few years in relation to VCAL. But the VCAL certificate is designed to allow more flexible time at school. So many students who are doing VCAL spend significant parts of their week at other venues. And the end of the VCAL train leads to a number of destinations. It might be continued education at certificate or diploma level at a TAFE, for example, or it might lead to an apprenticeship or traineeship, which has been partially completed whilst at school. And then sitting in between those two is VET, and Catholic Regional College Sydenham is a significant provider of VET in Victoria, and we pride ourselves on the fact that that all of our students have the opportunity to participate in VET, whether they're VCAL or VCE students. As it says there, you can choose a VET. Sorry, Jenna, if you can just go back once, sorry. You can choose VET, which will contribute to an ATAR, what we call that a scored VET. There are other VETs that are unscored. There are some of our VET courses that are run off-site, so people who are undertaking a VCAL pathway can undertake VETs that are what we would call external. Thanks. So I'm going to talk firstly about VCE. As you can see from our little graphic there, approximately 60% of our students in general go straight from school to a university pathway, but a significant number, just over 40%, find an alternate pathway from school. So if you're unsure about your pathway, the VCE is probably where you're going to be heading in year 11. And just to talk you through the mechanics of it, in year 11, all students who are doing the VCE select the equivalent of 6 subjects, and the majority of those will be at Unit 1 or 2 level. All students must choose English language or literature, and the reason for that, I should say, or EAL, the reason for that is that an English subject is a compulsory part of the VCE, both in year 11 and 12. The second part of our structure requires students to undertake what we call an enrichment. Now that may be continuing a VCE or VET subject that you are currently doing. Many students are doing Unit 1 and 2 VCE subjects either at Sydenham or at their current college. And so that may be one of the ways of meeting the enrichment. Many of our students commence a VET as part of their enrichment. Some of our students in year 11 apply to do a Unit 3-4 subject, and that would require an application, and it would require demonstration of academic ability to cope at that level. And some of our VCE subjects, for example, LOPE, literature and specialist maths and text and tradition, also meet that enrichment requirement. The third part of our structure is RE. So as Brendan said earlier, every student must undertake religious education, and there are a number of options in that suite. And then finally, students have some choices around their final 4 subjects or 3 subjects. You may or may not have seen this subject selection form. They have been sent to the 7 to 10 colleges, and this is just a planning sheet. So please don't look at this sheet as nominating particular subjects. You might want to have 3 or 4 copies of this. It's just a way of looking at meeting the 4 strands. The first column is the English or language strand. The second one is the enrichment. The third is RE, and the final one is the other options. Before I head on to VCAL, I would also say, in relation to those selections, that please rest assured that we'll work with you when we meet you either remotely or hopefully face-to-face. We'll have an opportunity to sit down with you for 10 or 15 minutes and really get to know the needs of you and your son or daughter, and we will try to unpack those selections. But I guess between now and those interviews, it's important that you start to think about the types of subjects that you're going to be selecting. I also want to talk about VCAL because, as you may or may not be aware, it's certainly been in the news for the last 6 months or so. From 2022, next year, VCAL will be gradually phased out, and it will be replaced by a VCE certificate that will be called something like VCE vocational specialisation. That's not written into the statute yet, but certainly the VCAL will no longer exist by 23. I also want to reassure you that if you are thinking of doing VCAL, that transition from 22 to 23 will be seamless. So rest assured that if you're doing VCAL in 2022, you will graduate, providing you meet all the requirements, you will graduate in 23 with what's called a VCE vocational specialisation. So please kind of understand and hopefully be reassured that we will be working with all of those students and families to ensure that there is a seamless transition. If you're thinking of VCAL, then there are a couple of things just to consider. Firstly, every VCAL student must undertake at least 2 VET programs, particularly in semester 1 at least for year 11. And the reason is that one of those VET programs will count as a structured workplace learning. If students are able to find a work placement in semester 2, then one of those VET programs can be eliminated or dropped. Right now, there are some students in year 11 VCAL who are dropping one of their VET programs. Traditionally, your most important VET is the VET that kind of is heading towards your career pathway. So many students are already undertaking VET programs as year 10s, and hopefully that's been a positive experience. And we would encourage students to continue that when they move to year 11. There are many opportunities for VCAL students to undertake VET programs off-site, but be aware that those VET programs incur quite a significant levy. So the VET programs that are offered at CRC Sydenham are relatively low priced because we're delivering them. However, if you are undertaking an external VET, I guess you just need to be aware that there will be significant cost involved in that. And I suppose if you're heading down that external VET, you really need to be committed. There's also a choice around the math strand. Most of our students do what's called VCAL numeracy. But some of our students, particularly those students who are involved in, say, a program like electrotechnology, might undertake VCE general maths as part of their VCAL program. All other parts of the program are mandatory. So the choices that you're making as a VCAL student really centre around the VET and the maths or numeracy strand. And if you are undertaking that particular pathway, again, there's a different subject selection form. Your 7 to 10 colleges should have a copy of this, and please use that as a planning tool. When you come to meet us in a few weeks' time, it would be very useful for you to bring that with you, but rest assured, we will work with you to ensure that you're making good, sensible VCAL decisions. I'll now hand over to Chantel.
Thanks very much, Jamie. Good evening, everybody. And I continue to encourage people to please place any questions in the Q&A section, as when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll be able to answer some of those questions. Moving on to some of the pragmatics that I'm sure a number of families are interested in. Firstly, at Catholic Regional College Sydenham, we work by a bring your own device system, and listed on this slide is a lot of information around the best options for students and what will work in terms of our college network. So we've got different programs, different systems, different operating systems there that are listed. And as a parent, I think that in terms of this, it is extremely difficult to go into a shop and to find the best device. And so at CRC Sydenham, we continue to assist parents in working through this process. And so closer towards the end of the year, information will be provided to you from certain stores where you're able to go in and pick up a device, which is the best option for you financially. Just in terms of some of the devices that your children may actually have at this time from their own 7 to 10 campuses, we do accept that they may be following that or using that device as they come into CRC Sydenham, and that is fine. There may need to be some updates which occur though. In terms of the subjects which your students are doing, there are a minimal number of subjects where higher spec devices may be required, and teachers will be able to assist students in ensuring that those devices will meet the needs of those subjects. Thanks, Jenna. And I suppose where to from here? What do families need to know to ensure that their children are prepared for their subject selections? Over the upcoming weeks, there's going to be a number of links which will be available through the college website under the class of 2023. Those links are in relation to Q&A webinars that are subject based. And so I do urge you to have a look at those Q&A lists and attend webinars that your child may be interested in, because I think it's extremely important that children are aware of what is being offered for each of the subject areas and whether or not they still are interested in completing that subject after gaining some knowledge about it. At the end of each of those webinars, there'll be a time for question and answer, and I think that's where we get a lot of information. You will be required to undertake course selection interviews, and those interviews will be booked via a system that will be forwarded information, and again, information will be provided through the college website, so please keep an eye on that. Students from CRC North Keilor, your interviews will be on Wednesday the 11th of August. And students from Caroline Springs and St Albans, your interviews will be on Wednesday the 18th of August. Those interviews take place with a staff member from Catholic Regional College Sydenham who have been trained in ensuring that we're able to provide adequate guidance to students to ensure that they have the best subjects chosen in terms of what they're interested in, what their pathways may be, and what meets the needs of their academic requirements. Obviously, linked to the subjects, we do have subject levies, and those subject levies will need to be paid by Wednesday the 18th of August to ensure that the student is able to be enrolled in the subject. From that point, as a team at Catholic Regional College Sydenham, we work together to put the classes together and that continues until the second week of the school holidays. And then hopefully in the first 2 weeks of term 4, students will begin to gather information around what subjects they have. It's not common, but in case there are stages where students have not been able to get their first 6 subjects, we ask students to choose reserves. And if we are required to use those reserves, then we will meet with students at their federation schools. As I said, it's not a common occurrence, but it may occur depending on blocking of the subjects. Towards the end of the year, students will also be participating in a program which is compulsory at the college. I think this is usually around the first week of December, but that will also be confirmed with families. And it's an orientation program where students are able to have contact with the subjects that they have been given, with their subject teachers, get some holiday homework to keep them entertained on the holidays, but also to become engaged in the community, to have involvement and to understand where they'll be coming next year and what is the requirement upon them. Thanks, Jenna. And so now we have the opportunity to answer some of the questions from parents and families and students. And so I will go through some of these questions and direct them towards some of the panel members. So the first one, Jamie, I think I might hand this one over to you. Is there a subject selection booklet?
Well, there's a couple of ways you can go with this. There is a course handbook which is available on the college website under class of 2023. But also, my understanding is that families have been sent a brochure that has some information around what's required from here until the interview process. And as I said, 7 to 10 colleges should have a copy of those subject selection planning sheets. But certainly if there are any concerns or questions, I'm more than happy for parents to contact me at the college. I'll try and answer them.
Thanks, Jamie. There's a question here. My son is from CRC North Keilor. He has a MacBook. Can he use this at Sydenham? Does he need to return the laptop at the end of the year to North Keilor? Just in terms of that, I suppose each of the campuses will provide families and students with information around what they can do to secure their device if it's owned by the school. Usually some of those schools will have buyback schemes that you can use. So I think it's important that we work together as a federation to have clear information going out to families. And then if you do have the opportunity to have that device moving forward, then he's more than welcome to have it here at our school. Another notice, and I suppose, Brendan, I might pass this one on to you. I noticed that the levies are due on the same day of the interviews for 2 campuses. Can you please advise of this process?
Not every subject has levies. It depends on what you choose. If your son or daughter chooses a subject which, or a suite of subjects which has a higher number of levies, and that's going to be problematic on the night, our finance team will be present on the night. And like anything, we'll work with families. We want to support you. We want to see your children here studying. And so money won't get you in, money won't get you out, so to speak. We'll work with you to work out something if that's going to cause any challenges. We understand that during these times, COVID has caused some families to be on a reduced income, and likewise with fees. If fees are going to be an issue, they're not an issue. We will support families. This has always been your school if you're from our 7 to 10 college. And if you're on a fee concession or a healthcare card and you get a fee concession at your 7 to 10 college, the same will apply at Sydenham. We want to work with you, so don't think that because you're changing campuses that there's a whole new suite of rules. The same will apply. We want to work with you. And so just talk to us. If we can have good communication, we can resolve it, and we can make sure that your son or daughter are studying the course that they want to study. That's the most important thing.
Thanks, Brendan. The next question is, when will the subject selection interview times be available to book? They're actually open now, and so we urge families to please make a booking as soon as possible, so that we can begin scheduling that for our staff also. And as I mentioned within the slides, those interview bookings will be available through the college website. The booking system will be closed Friday prior to the interview date. Our next question is, how do we know what levy to pay if we don't know if the child has been accepted to the subject where the levy is, Brendan?
So the levies will be listed in that course handbook, which is online, that Jamie mentioned. You'll also receive that information with your subject selection form. Not every subject has a levy. In fact, only about half of the subjects and the vet subjects have a levy. It's usually for a uniform or a kit of material that your son or daughter will be given to undertake the course. Now, if levies are an issue, let's not make them an issue. That's the most important thing. We'll work with you again. Where are the levy costs? We've said that one. It will be tallied on the night, and we'll always work with families if there's a challenge in paying on the night. Hopefully the levies aren't too high for families. It's very rare for a student to choose every subject that would have a levy. Only a few of our, there's always options. So some of our subjects have levies because of the materials, say furnishing. They would receive a whole lot of materials that they will use and then take home, which will be what they build and produce in furnishing. Now, in other subjects such as global politics, there won't be a levy, and a number of other subjects, because everything's covered within the fees and also with what we teach. So it's only where there are items that are required to be produced and the student keeps the end product that there's usually levies.
Thanks, Brendan. The next question I think I'll hand over to Jamie. If a student undertakes VCE, are they still able to attend TAFE or a vet subject as opposed to university?
The short answer is yes. I guess in the slide that I presented, it may have been misunderstood. VCE kind of opens up, particularly, well, a scored VCE opens up all of those opportunities, ranging from university, TAFE, apprenticeship. As you move to an unscored VCE, the university pathway becomes a difficult one straight from school to university. However, there's a stepped approach that might be from school to TAFE to university. And finally, the VCAL certificate is primarily designed for movement from school to an apprenticeship or traineeship or TAFE. So I hope that's answered the question. Basically, if you're undertaking the VCE and you complete the VCE, whether it's scored or unscored, then TAFE is an option.
Thanks, Jamie. The next question is around VCAL, and I suppose it's around collecting more information around VCAL. There is a Q&A webinar which is scheduled for VCAL, and so I suggest that it would be important that if you're interested in VCAL to attend that Q&A webinar so that you're able to receive more information around the program. Our VCAL coordinator, Sue Edwards, and Joseph Shaw will be available at that Q&A, and they'll be there presenting information, but also answering questions. And then if you require further information, then I'm sure that Sue and Joe would also be available for interviews after that.
Can I jump in there too, Chantel? And just
yes.
You were talking about those webinars that are occurring over the next week or so. Mm-hmm. I would encourage as many people to attend as many of those as possible, because there will be an opportunity to kind of find out more about particular subjects, which would normally have happened tonight. You would have had the opportunity to move around and talk to people. The webinars are I guess the next best way to do that.
Thanks. Jamie, the next question you might be able to answer also. There is a subject selection interview at Caroline Springs on the 12th of August. There's also a course selection interview on the 18th of August, and what is the difference between them?
Yeah, look, the one at Caroline Springs is run by Caroline Springs, so it's one of those, I guess, internal processes that Caroline Springs run. They run them very well. So the staff that are involved with those will be counselling students around their subject selections, and we will provide 2 of our staff to be there on that day and evening. And our role will be to kind of help the Caroline Springs staff and families when they require it. But the final subject selection interview, which was run at Sydenham, will be run by our staff, and that's where we'll be making those final selections. So I would look at the Caroline Springs day evening as a interim step, another path to making good selections. And I would say that Caroline Springs do that particularly well.
Thanks, Jamie. The next question is a question in relation to students who are part of the Salt and Light program. And those students have a special subject selection interview, which is being booked on the 5th of August. If you're involved in that program, you are not required to attend any additional subject selection interviews. Brendan, is there an average price for subject levies?
It really ranges depending on the subject. So outdoor ed, for instance, is a higher price. I think that's about $300. That's one of our highest levies, and that covers all the camps and activities associated with that course. Likewise, furnishing is one of the higher levies at about, I think it's $400 because of the amount of materials that some students receive. Some of the levies are down around $25, $30. So it really does depend on what the subject is. Those levies are available to families under the class of 2023 on our website, and will be published for you so that you can look through that list and make a informed decision. There was actually another question about what happens if a levy is paid and the student doesn't end up getting into that subject. The way we run the school is that we don't have a set timetable from year to year. We build our timetable based on student selections. So every year, certain classes will go up and down. The reason we do this is we try to accommodate student selections as much as we can. Sometimes there might be a blocking issue, but it's not because classes are usually full. We try and run as many classes of each subject as students demand. And we tend to run some classes that are smaller and don't fill them up if that's what's required by students' choices. If you choose a subject and change out of it, and you've paid a levy for that subject, you receive a credit against your fees. You're not going to lose the money. It gets credited towards you, or it can go towards the other subject that you may choose, which may have a levy. So the money isn't just disappearing. It still goes towards your son or daughter's education.
Thanks, Brendan. Jamie, over to you for this one. What is an e-learning levy and a book levy? Do we pay both?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is yes. The e-learning levy is required to support the infrastructure that runs our internet, our learning management system, and then there, of course, there's a book levy or book deposit which helps pay for the textbooks which students are given over the journey of 2 years, and a significant part of that levy is returned once all textbooks are back to the library.
Thanks, Jamie. The next question, Christine, when are subject selections finalised? So at a CRC Sydenham level, we try and finalise those subjects on the second week of the school holidays. Students are then informed, hopefully within the first 2 weeks of term 4. Wendy, your child is already doing hospitality, has the uniform. Do you still need to pay a levy for the course? As students move from one year to the next, there may still be levies associated with the course. The levies aren't just for uniforms, as Brendan mentioned. There's other items which are required. So in terms of hospitality, for instance, there may be food items which are required, and that comes under the levy, or there may be excursions as well. So the levies may not be the same for both of the years, taking into account that a uniform has been purchased in the first year. Just moving through. Jamie, there was a meeting that we missed yesterday. Are we able to get a copy of that PowerPoint?
That PowerPoint or that presentation is currently or is about to be put up onto our website. I'm just wondering if Jenna, if I can share the screen. It might be worth just having a look at our website and showing people where they can access some of that information. Yeah, so the website, obviously many of you would have seen it, but if you move over here to joining our community, class of 23, you'll see a number of resources. So there's this course selection brochure there, which is going to help you work through those subject selection forms. There's the 22 course handbook. It's a big document, over 500 pages. So you want to be selecting or looking at particular subjects that are of interest. That will give you quite a detailed description of the course or the subject. There are course selection booking forms here. So if you're unsure about getting those bookings, that will be available there. And then, you know, Brendan was talking about fee structures and subject levies. That information is also obviously quite useful as you're working your way through this process. So that, again, that's at our website, join our community, class of 23.
Thank you very much, Jamie. The next question is in relation to how to go about paying fees if the interviews are done on BPay. In terms of that, if the interviews are done via Zoom, there'll be a number of different ways that payments are going to be made accessible to families. BPay options will be provided when we've done subject selections on the receipts. There'll be information on how to access the finance staff on the phone after the interviews. There'll also be opportunities for families to meet with the finance team if you require further information about those fees also. The next question is, and we might hand over to Jenna for this one. Jenna, how do we measure an ATAR score?
Do you want me to take that one?
Sure,
Sorry.
Jamie, thank you.
So yeah, we spent a fair bit of time last night on that. Short of going through a number of slides, the short answer to that is that in order to get an ATAR, a student must complete their VCE, which requires them to successfully achieve 16 units of at level 1, 2, and or 3, 4. 4 of those subjects must be at level 3, 4, unit 3, 4, which is the equivalent of year 12. One of those units must be an English subject, so that's compulsory. The majority of our students at CRC Sydenham actually finish with 5 or 6 unit 3, 4 scores. So in order to get an ATAR, at least 4 scores, but probably more than that, probably 5 or 6. The best 4 scores are added together, and those scores are out of 50. So you end up with what we call a subject aggregate, and that aggregate is the sum of your best 4 scores plus 10% of the fifth and or sixth subject. Then you end up with what's called an aggregate. The aggregate could range from anywhere between 0 and 210. Very unlikely to get a score of 210, and very unlikely to get a score of 0. Those scores are then placed on a continuum, and if you think an 8 or 80, that means that you have performed better than 80% of the Year 12 cohort in Victoria. It's quite a long explanation, and it's probably best done with a presentation. And I would strongly encourage you to have a look at last night's presentation, which will be on the website. That will give you a much better description than the one I've just given, I'm sure.
Thanks, Jamie. Next question is, if my child's been studying core maths, would I be able to pick up methods? I think that there's a number. Math methods is obviously a subject which has high demands, and when you're looking at subject selections, we do look at the achievement levels of students, and we do that only because we are trying to ensure that students have a level of success for themselves, because there's nothing worse than having a child who is not succeeding within their subject and doesn't enjoy it, because that can filtrate to other subjects that they're doing. I suggest going to the Q&A session, which is related to mathematics subjects, and then discussing it also in terms of with your subject selection in your subject selection interviews. My son's has a vet on the 18th of August. He finishes at 5:20. Yes, subjects will still be running on that day, and so I suggest interviews are made post the class being undertaken.
Chantel, can I just share my screen again? I'm sorry to jump in there. But if you go to the class of 23 page, which I showed you a while ago, last night's ATAR information session is there. And that went for that was actually went for about an hour. You can scroll your way through there and find a relatively detailed explanation of study scores and ATARs, etc. So that's probably worth knowing.
Thanks, Jamie. Just looking through some of the questions. When will we find out the outcome of subject selections? Will we be informed on the night of the interview? Whilst that would be lovely, unfortunately, it's not the case. What happens is that we undertake subject selections via an online portal. We then tally all of the subjects. We have 2 year levels, around 920 students that we have to take into account, because some of those year 11s might be doing a year 12 subject. And then we look at our timetable and blocking it. It does take a little while. So within the first 2 weeks of term 4 is when we can confirm those subjects. How do you determine if a child is to be accepted into a particular subject? Obviously, a lot of that work happens during subject selection time with our staff at CRC Sydenham. It's around looking at achievement levels and their level of commitment for certain subjects, if there's any prerequisites that are required, and then moving forward from that point, looking at how it fits on our timetable, ensuring there's no clashes and ensuring we have adequate amount of students for subjects. When do we need to set up or get the sector account for our child? Jenna?
At the commencement of the year, all parents will be given the information on how they log on themselves. So you will be given access codes and information for how you can download that platform. We also publish information in terms of how to access the the phone-based app, how you can access it on your computer, and that information is communicated at the beginning of the year to parents.
Wonderful. There is enrolment application fee, e-learning levy, tuition fee, and book hire levy are all paid per year in total on top of the subject levy. Jamie?
I might take that one if I can,
Okay.
Chantal.
Thanks, Brendan.
The tuition fees are set at a federation level, and they are each year. Subject levies are only if you choose a subject which has a levy associated with it, and again, not all of our subjects do. The book hire levy, we originally set up the book hire scheme to save families money, and we recognised that the cost of buying textbooks was getting up to, in some cases for maths and science students, $1,000 a year. So it was decided to go down the book hire scheme where this college owns the books. We buy them in, we own the books, and we hire them at a nominal fee to families for the 2 years, and you don't have to go and buy the textbooks. It works out to about $600 a family cheaper over the 2 years, in fact. That's why we've got that. It's not compulsory by any stretch of the imagination, but it does save money. And so, yes, these things are year on year, but we do try and keep the costs down as much as possible. And certainly, we're trying to make it as affordable as we can. And again, if there is an issue with being able to afford to send your child here, we want to work with you, because we want to make sure that your son or daughter gets an education here, and that we support all of our Catholic families, because we work in partnership with the parishes, and that's why this college was set up, to serve the Catholic families of the local parishes in this region. And if you're at CRC, St Albans, North Keele or Caroline Springs, this is already your school, and we want to support you.
Thanks, Brendan. And Brendan, while you're there, is there a book hire levy for VCAL?
No, there isn't. No. We've removed that because the VCAL books are not required. When it goes to being the VCE, so in 2023, we may need to revisit that depending on what the subject selections are, because some of the VCAL students will become VCE students, may be accessing the VCE subjects which will require textbooks.
Thanks, Brendan.
I can
Jenna.
answer that one, I reckon. The next one, if you like. I've got
Fantastic.
the website there, which is, sorry, I keep butting in. I feel a bit rude, but it says, can you please show where to book the interviews? If I share my screen and you go to the 23 plus 23 page, you'll see course selection booking forms here. And if you're a parent of someone at North Keilor, then you click on the North Keilor. And then eventually there'll be an event registration form. So you'll just fill in coming up in a moment. So you'll see which one of these two meetings you want to attend. There's a number of different times there, obviously. You click on that and then complete these details, and that'll automatically come to us, and then we'll confirm that in due course.
Thanks, Jamie. The next subject is, if my child chooses subject, starts the subject and realises they want to change, are they able to do that, and what is the process? I suppose, Michelle, as much as possible, we would like our students to undertake the process of subject selection in an informed manner. What we're trying to do is ensure that students have some level of continuity in terms of their subject selections. When students change during the course time, they miss starts, and it can be quite disruptive. And especially if we're changing a lot of students, and that can actually impact others when we have to close down subjects. We do have a grace period, but as I said, that grace period is quite a short one. And as much as possible, we encourage students to choose correctly at the start, because it really can impact their choices moving forward.
Can I just add to that, Chantal?
Yes.
The orientation time that the year 11 experience, as Chantal said at the beginning of December, is really the time to start to engage in those conversations if students are feeling that they haven't made choices that are best suited to their subjects. By this point in time, obviously each student has been assigned to a cluster, and the coordinator plays a really integral role in those conversations around subject, I suppose, any issues that may have arisen in those first couple of instances in engaging in those subjects. And that is the best point in time to start to have those conversations. As Chantel said, changing subjects late can have a lot of carry-on effects for various other things. So seek out the relevant people within that orientation week and start to have those conversations early if you are feeling that you have maybe not made the right subject choice.
Thanks, Jenna. And while you're there, my son is from CRC Caroline Springs. Is there a new uniform or change of uniform going to CRC Sydenham for year 11?
There are some slight changes. So in terms of the blazer, that will remain consistent. The blazer is still the same. In terms of the sports uniform, there are some logos that do change between the year 7 to 10 campuses and the senior campus. It is also sometimes subject dependent, whether or not students are engaging in physical-based subjects as to which uniforms they might need. So more information in relation to uniforms and what will be required will be distributed well ahead of the orientation period.
Thanks, Jenna. Next question, under the column RE, if I choose one unit of religion and society and I choose biology, would this be unit 1 biology? Would I require to take unit 2 biology? How do I complete this? Before I'm happy to answer that one. So I suppose in relation to that, we do offer half units of RE, and the reason why we do that is to provide student greater choice in terms of their preparation for possible subject choices in year 12. In terms of biology, it is a single unit, so it would be unit 1 across the whole year. Within that unit, we choose a unit. It may be unit 1 or it could be unit 2. Whatever unit is actually going to prepare the student the best for their year 12 subject. By just doing 1 unit of biology, that is going to be adequate enough to prepare you if you do decide to choose a unit 3 for biology.
I think it's worth sort of just noting as an extension to that, if you are sort of a little undecided about which subjects you might like to choose and you're not quite sure what then you might like to carry on into year 12, the option of being able to undertake a single unit, think of it like a sort of taste tester, that you can have that experience, you can still immerse yourself in the subject, but it's a really good way for you, I suppose, to have a broader experience of the suite of subjects that are available to you.
Thanks, Jenna. The next question is around, my daughter would like to do chemistry and physics next year, but she didn't do it this year. Can she still do it? As a chemistry teacher, I think that chemistry is quite a demanding subject. And so in terms of chemistry and physics, there usually is additional information on student achievement levels in science and English, which are required so that we can ensure students are able to cope with the demands of the subject. I don't think it matters if they haven't done chemistry and physics, but there is I suppose, an expected level of knowledge for those subjects. We don't start at the start, we move quite quickly. Okay, Jamie, I might get you to answer this one. Can you please explain how the payments apply for VCE subject levies? Psychology 1 semester is $50, a whole year is $80. Are we supposed to pay $80 for the whole year, or how does this $50 apply?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that psychology is able to be taken in conjunction with 1 unit of RE. So if that was the case, if you were doing a single unit of psychology, you would pay $50 and not $80. The other reason it's there is if a student chose to do psychology for the whole year, they would of course pay $80. If they decided halfway through the year to discontinue that, then there would be a refund of $30. So it's kind of a way of accounting for those changes in subject selections.
Thanks, Jamie. I think that we've gone through all of the questions now in relation to Q&A. There's one more. What would be the benefits of completing certificate in engineering for my child wanting to become an engineer in the future? Jamie?
Yeah, look, I've had a similar question from a parent yesterday. If your son or daughter is thinking about engineering, cert to an engineering, that would need to be done off-site externally. So we would need to have a conversation with you individually around a couple of things. Firstly, how committed is the student to that pathway? Secondly, if that student is considering VCE, we would need to have a good conversation around how that might work. We don't normally allow that to happen. However, in some circumstances where we can see that students are particularly committed to that, we can make that work, but that would be an individual conversation decision.
Thanks, Jamie. Next question is, my son is doing VCE General Maths in Year 10. Can he do math methods and specialist maths in Year 11 and 12? I suppose in relation to that question, I would envisage that your child is obviously passionate about mathematics and is quite good at it, doing an accelerated subject in Year 10. And so I would suggest that in relation to doing math methods and specialist maths, that if they are passionate, if they're dedicated, if they complete a reasonable amount of homework, that it could be a possibility. I think for those subjects, they do require referee information provided from the federation school that they're at, so we can meet the needs of the students and ensure that they're choosing the subjects which are most appropriate to their needs, especially trying to meet the pathways and the prerequisite studies for their chosen university pathway if that's where they're going. So that comes to the end of our questions for this evening. It's not the only time where you're going to be able to ask questions. And so I suggest that you attend the relevant Q&A webinars that are linked to each of your subject areas, and there'll be further opportunities to ask more specific questions for those. You'll have subject selection interviews too with our staff, where you are going to be able to continue to ask questions where necessary. I thank all of our panelists this evening, especially our two students, Martin and Arabella, for being with us this evening and participating. And I will hand over to Brendan for the close. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for attending. Thank you for being part of this information session. It is the start of the journey. It's by no means going to slow down or stop. There's a long journey ahead as we go through this subject selection all the way through to orientation in December. So please keep the channels of communication open. We're always here to support and help families, and we look forward to seeing you at that subject selection interview night. Thank you for your attendance, and good night.